I'm delighted to welcome Katherine from Tenuta degli to tell us about the story of the winery and then sample their beautiful wines. I want to shout out to Paul and Maggie who introduced us to Tenuta degli. As Paul said, these are a really great winery. You need to talk to these people. So thanks for that intro. This is the first time we've been into one of, shall we say, the boutique wineries rather than the big players like them outside. So it was really nice to welcome you here. I think we're going to enjoy both the talk and the wine. Over to you.
Yeah. All right. How's the volume? Not too loud? I hear an echo, but I'll try not to think about it. So welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Katherine, and I'm here this evening representing Tenuta dei, which is owned by the Cavalli family, so famous Florentine family. And we are a boutique winery. We produce about 60,000 bottles a year, which I know sounds like a lot for one person to drink, but in the wine world, it's a pretty small production. I'm originally from California, so that's why I don't have an Italian accent when I speak English, maybe a Californian one. So I'm going to start the lecture talking a little bit about Panzano. So that's where we are located. And see here on this next slide, this yellow area, well, in yellow you see Tuscany, and in the heart of Tuscany you see a red area, and that is Chianti Classico. And right in the heart of Chianti Classico is where Panzano in Chianti is located. And we are just outside the small village of Panzano. That's where the estate is located with the vineyards and also the horses, which you'll get to know through the presentation. But I'd like to start a little bit by just introducing you to the territory, because many of you may or may not know, Chianti, first of all, is a territory. So we're talking about a geographical location with limits and boundaries as outlined in this map. And in this beautiful territory, we make wonderful wines, Chianti Classico and some other red wines as well as you'll taste tonight. So Panzano in Chianti is a beautiful fortified village that sits on top of a hill. It's about 500 meters above sea level, and it has overlooking the breathtaking Golden Valley, which is also known as La Conca d'Oro in Italian. And it really is one of the most important valleys of production in Chianti Classico. Here's another view of Panzano from a little bit further away from a hilltop that we're going to get to know very well as well this evening, called San Leolino. But the ancient territory of Panzano holds origin back to the Etruscan times. The Etruscans were the first to shape the Chianti landscape as they abandoned the pastoral life for agricultural, and they were the ones that introduced the cultivation of grapevines. There's also evidence of Roman influence scattered throughout Panzano, and the Romans began the olive tree cultivation. And in Chianti Classico, if you come visit anytime during this period, it's the harvest, and particularly this Golden Valley that you see in this picture here is actually turning golden. Now, in the past, the name La Conca d'Oro, the Golden Valley, actually took its roots from the farmers of the time that used to also cultivate a lot of wheat. But today it's mostly, again, olive trees and vineyards. And right after the harvest, everything starts turning yellow. So it really does turn to this golden color. But it gives you an idea of how long the land of Chianti has been used for wine and olive oil production, as it's still the main crops today. But the village of Panzano really reached its most important historical meaning, which can be seen, I'm going to go back to the slide, by the fortified hamlet that exists today. And the remains of Panzano today, you could see the castle walls, and you can also see two corner towers. Now, the corner towers are used, one for the church that lies in the historical center of Panzano, and then one of the towers has actually been renovated and is a private property. Now, during the medieval time, there was the trend, let's say, by the noble families to build fortified villages really as an attempt to defend their property, because the areas between Florence and Siena were always constantly in battle. And we, Tenuta dei, have our location right below this beautiful church, which is called La Pieve di San Iolino. From San Iolino, this is your view of, we're just on the opposite of Panzano, so you get to see the Golden Valley. But the Pieve di San Iolino, which means a rural church with papistry, also has a lot of connection to the past as well. The church is one of the most important Romanesque churches of the whole Chianti region. Now, the structure that we see today was built during the 12th century, but there are documents that date back to the 10th century that talk about the church already existing. So a lot of history as well. And the church is important for us. Here is a beautiful picture of the garden that is just right next to the church. So if you ever do come visit us, this garden is special even today because there's typically a lot of local artists that have displays of their art. So it changes usually every month. But just to give you a little bit more information about the history of the church, during the Renaissance period, the Pieve and the farm estate was granted to the hospital of Santa Maria Novella, Santa Maria Nuova in Florence, which is the oldest hospital in Florence. And even today, you can find the hospital's coat of arms adorned on the outside of the church. Now, I speak of the church just to have you understand a little bit about the area, Panzano, where Tenuta dei is located. Now, our farm, let's say our history, though we are in an ancient territory, has a newer, more modern approach. So here is a picture of Roberto Cavalli and Tommaso Cavalli. So our farm takes history with the Cavalli family starting in the 70s. And in the 70s, Roberto Cavalli had bought the estate actually for the desire to have a home in the countryside. And he also started breeding trotter horses. And it wasn't till the year 2000 that his oldest son, Tommaso, who's in the picture with him, they're looking at the grapes and the vines, studied the soil, the property, and decided to focus on winemaking in a place that he grew up with his father. There's a picture of Tommaso and some of the horses. So Tommaso, for the past 30 years, has dedicated his work to bringing in the vineyards, studying the soil, for planting the vineyards and starting the line Tenuta dei that we'll be tasting this evening. And he's also continued with the horse breeding. So here's a picture of Tommaso Cavalli with the consulting winemaker, Carlo Fedini. Carlo Fedini is one of the most important winemakers in the Tuscan area and now also internationally. So he's worked along with Tommaso from the beginning, studying the soil types of the property and trying to figure out the best spots for the specific varieties that we have on the property. We have about 9 hectares. The property itself is 70 hectares. But most of it is dedicated to the horse fields. And then we have some olive fields and forest as well. Here's a picture of Tommaso working very hard, tasting the wine with Carlo Fedini. It's a very important part of making the wine. So here's another picture of the estate from above. And our estate lies right below the church. I always like to say that, first of all, we have that special connection to the church, as the church is our neighbor. But when Tommaso started planting the vineyards to make the focus wines that we'll be tasting tonight, he didn't want to build a winery on the property. So he was able and lucky enough to find space below the church that he is now leasing. And as you'll see in the next slides, the wine is made right below the church. So we have a special connection spiritually, historically, and to the church, the Pieve San Leonino. I always like to say that our wines are handcrafted. Best wines all over the world are made in the vineyard, first of all. The most important aspect of making a high quality wine is growing high quality grapes. So there's a very elaborate work done throughout the year, lots of manual work, lots of mowing, lots of pruning and dedication to the vineyard. And then when it comes time to picking the grapes, everything is manually picked by hand. And as you can see in the picture, they're picked gently and brought into these small grape crates. Just Oh, sure. I'm not sure how the lighting works here. As long as you don't fall asleep, right? No, I don't think it is. Is that better? No. It might be the projection light. There we go. All right. All right. Well, making sure you're not going to fall asleep. There is a test at the end of the lecture. And the manual labor continues as we bring the grapes, the fresh grapes, into the cellar. So you can see in the background there are the small crates, and we do an intensive work at looking at all the grapes again. This is a top sorting table, as I call it, and here the full clusters are unloaded. And at this point, we're again checking all the clusters and making sure there's no leaves going into the destemming machine, which is the next process. Now, here's a few pictures where you can see the top table that we were just looking at. And before you get to the lower table, there's the machine. It's called the destemming machine. And it actually gently takes the berries off the stem. So as of right now, well, tonight you'll be tasting all our red wines. We make 3 red labels. And when it comes to the red wine production, we do the fermentations with the whole berries. And as you can see, we individually try to look at every single berry. What we're trying to look for at this point, we're trying to make sure there's no cap stems, no green parts of the stems, that all the berries look good. There's no raisin, no unhealthy berry before they get collected into a stainless steel cart where we eventually unload to our fermentation tanks. It's just another picture of all the berries. And you can really see that they're completely intact. And red wine grapes are just amazing if you get ever an opportunity to taste them. They have very thick skin and a big seed as well, but they're sweeter. They're quite different than table grapes. And see here, there's an example of the worker trying to take out all the green bits before we collect the berries to go into our fermentation vats. Now, this room here is the first room. Let's say it's a little bit more of our technical room when it comes to the winemaking. And this was renovated by Tommaso and an architect that he had worked with in the year 2002. And our first harvest was in 2004. Now, here in this picture, these vats are empty, but we do open top fermentation. So those beautiful grapes that we saw previously get unloaded from the top into these fermentation vats, where it's all temperature controlled during the alcoholic fermentation. And we are an organic farm. We've always been organic from the beginning. The family believed in sustainability, and also having the horses on the farm was very important. So what we do when it comes to the alcoholic fermentation is that we do natural fermentations. We don't add an external yeast. So it's basically the microflora that's just growing on the skin of the grape. So it's a little bit of a slower fermentation, let's say. I don't know if you can see here this piston. So once the tanks are full, and when we make red wine, the alcoholic fermentation consists of the sugars being eaten by the yeast, makes carbon dioxide, and there's a natural separation of the solid material, which would be the skins and the seeds of the grape, and the fermenting must. So when we make red wine, it's important that we macerate. This is the time where the wine is really born. The must that's turning into wine gets its color from the skins, the anthocyanins, the tannins. The best tannins are the fruit tannins that are also found on the skin of the grape. So all that is very, very important to the fermentation process. And what we do to be more gentle, and because when you're making a high quality wine, what's important is that you don't break up the seeds of the grape, because that's where you can get more astringent tannins. So we use this piston here. If everybody could see it, I'm trying to move the mouse. It's on the other side. There we go, right there. So with a remote control, we can actually push down the cap. So that's a way of mixing up the fermenting must with the grape skins. Here's a picture of the cellar when the tanks are closed, because we can also put still wine in there, though we mostly use the fermentation room for the beginning part of the alcoholic fermentation. And when it comes time to separate the wine from the skins, which is usually about 3 to 4 weeks after the alcoholic fermentation, we drain our wine by gravity through this hole that we have. We open up the stainless steel door, and we can bring our tubes downstairs to basically what is the foundation of the church. And that's where we age our wine in all French oak barrels. So here we're in the facade of the entry to their barrel room, and up here is where we had that coat of arms that dates back to the Renaissance period. But there's a big door that leads us to the foundation of the church where we have our barrels. So in the back here of this room is a secret, let's say, hole in the ceiling that brought us back to the fermentation room. So we drain the wines by gravity to the barrels during that first movement, which really is the best and most gentle way to move the wine, especially in the beginning. So here's just another beautiful picture of our barrel room, which is in the foundation of the church. And this space in the church is where you really feel the history of the church and the area. And it's really like a cave. So it's the perfect environment, ambiance for the aging of the wine. It's naturally cool and humid as well. So perfect for the wines that sleep in the barrel for the given amount of time. And here you see the French oak barrels that we use. They're medium toasted, and we use them a maximum of 4 years. So I'll tell you a little bit more about it. I'm actually tasting the wine because it'll make more sense. Probably a little bit more exciting. Just another beautiful picture of the barrels. And once we put our blend together, because we make 3 different wines. Now, the first one is a Chianti Classico. It's our tribute to the territory and to the history of the land. It is 100% Sangiovese, but you have to imagine it's Sangiovese coming from maybe 50, 60 different oak containers. And the other 2 wines are actually international blends of different varietals that age that are harvested and aged separately in the oak. So we make our blends after the aging process in the oak in these pure cement tanks, where the wine spends about 4 months before it is bottled. And these are very thick cement walls, pure cement, where the wine is actually in contact with the cement, and it's always porous. So wine is alive. What's important about wine when it's in a barrel, when it's in these cement tanks, or even aging in the bottle, is that it's breathing. It's going through microoxygenation, which allows the wine to develop, to the flavors to marry and become more harmonious. And then we eventually, of course, bottle the wine and enjoy it. So here's a few more pictures of the property just to give you an idea. So there's a church tower right above, and these are some of our horses that you see from the other side of the church, the back end. And the other side of the church was the Golden Valley and Panzano. And our vineyards are planted in the highest part of our property. And if you ever come visit us, you always have the opportunity to see the horses as well as they roam throughout the property. Here's another picture of the vineyards. So our vineyards have the same exposure as the Golden Valley. It's a southwest exposure, so it gets the most sunlight during the day. We're about 450 meters above sea level, so also quite high in elevation. And that's important for winemaking because, of course, you need the sun, the heat, to ripen the grapes, to ripen the tannins. But in the highest part of the property is also where we have the biggest temperature change in the evening. So even in a hot summer like this year, it always cooled down significantly in the higher pieces of the property. And that keeps the balance and the acidity in the wines that hopefully you find when we're tasting. And here's just a beautiful picture to give you an idea of the soil that is so famous in the Chianti Classico area, in our area as well. It's a lot of marl mixed with galestro. So it's this bit of a limestone, a very fragile mineral soil that is perfect for wine grapes, so they can grow deep roots and pick up minerality and also pick up water deep into the ground, because we don't irrigate. So in summers like this summer where it was quite hot and dry, I'm always impressed to see the quality of the grape, because our vineyards are now over 20 years and they've got very deep roots. Just some beautiful pictures of the horses, typical scenery if you ever come visit us. So the mothers are full-time on the property, and it is still a horse breeding farm as well. And we breed the trotter horses. So it's just a beautiful picture of the mother and the foal, typical of the area, and the horses playing together in the winter time. And then at the bottom of the property is the home, one of the private residence of the Cavalli family. Now it's become more of a leisure home. Tommaso Cavalli actually was living on the property for about 30 years, especially when he started developing the vineyards. But he actually has 3 daughters now. They're at the ages of 12, 14, and 18. So they've moved full-time to Florence because, as you can imagine, school and activities are all in Florence. So it was a little bit less commuting, but Tommaso is at the farm every day. And we perform our tastings inside one of the dining rooms of the Cavalli family. And here's just a beautiful picture of the table with the artwork and the wines. So if you ever come for a tasting, because you love our wines tonight, and here are 3 different labels. Now there's 4 pictures here because there's 2 of Cavalli, but Forcole is our Chianti Classico, Le Redini is our Merlot blend, and then Cavalli is the flagship wine that takes the family name. It's a Bordeaux blend, which is aged also longer in oak. And here's just more pictures of what the tasting looks like after. So I would like also to present, before we get into the tasting, a new video that is going to be in our new website. And we're going to start with the video and then we'll do the tasting. So let me just find where I have to press play. And it just kind of summarizes everything I just talked about. All right, I think we're ready to taste some wine, right? I'm going to take the mic off.